Hello, friend. Welcome to Stories for Snoozing. If you enjoy calm stories to help you drift to sleep, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps others find us too. Now, settle in, relax, and let's begin our story. Night had come gently to the valley. The air was cool and still, brushed only by the faint hiss of falling snow. High on a small hill stood a wooden house, its roof silvered by moonlight, its windows dark, all but one. In the front window a single candle burned. Its flame was small, steady and golden, the way a heartbeat might look if it glowed instead of thumped. Every night the candle waited there, a quiet promise against the dark. Those who passed through the valley said the candle was a guide, a little light for lost travelers, a sign that somewhere, someone still kept watch. The snow deepened, the world hushed. Inside the house, warmth breathed softly from the fire, and the candle flickered beside a curtained pane, sending tiny shadows dancing across the walls. Beyond the hill, far along the frozen road, a traveler drew his cloak close and looked up toward that faint, friendly glow. It shimmered like hope on a cold horizon. The traveler's name was Thomas. He had been walking since afternoon, his boots whispering against drifts of new snow, his breath rising in small clouds that drifted behind him like ghosts. The forest around him was quiet, the kind of quiet that listens. Branches bowed low under weight of frost, and every so often a branch sighed, releasing a feather-soft fall of powder. In the distance wolves called once, not with hunger, but as if reminding one another they were alive. Thomas smiled faintly at the sound. He was tired, yes, but not afraid. The candle waited ahead, and somehow he felt it had been waiting just for him. Each step became slower, each breath a gentle rhythm, in and out, like the tide of a sleeping sea. Snow brushed against his boots, and the world narrowed to small details. The crunch beneath his feet, the silver light on the branches, the scent of pine and wood smoke carried faintly on the breeze. He remembered his grandmother's words, that every traveler walks two roads, the one beneath his feet and the one inside his heart. Tonight, both led home. The hill rose slowly ahead, and at its crest, the candle gleamed brighter, its flame bending and straightening in the wind, never quite giving in. As he climbed, he thought of warmth, the crackle of a hearth, the taste of bread, the sound of a voice saying, "You've come far enough for tonight." He could almost hear that voice now, soft and kind, woven with the hush of snow. Step by step, the light grew nearer until he could see the frame of the window, the soft lace curtain moving slightly with the draft, and behind it, the little candle standing proud on its plate. Thomas paused, letting the sight rest on him. The glow soaked into his eyes, down through his chest, and something inside him unclenched. He did not hurry. He simply stood there, breathing slowly, letting the snow settle on his shoulders and melt away. When he finally reached the porch, he brushed his gloves against his coat, lifted the latch, and listened to the old wood sigh open. A wave of gentle warmth greeted him, the scent of pine logs, dry herbs hanging from rafters, and the quiet hum of a kettle near the fire. He stepped inside, and behind him the wind softened, as though the night itself exhaled in relief. Before him the candle still burned by the window, its little flame reflected in the glass like twin stars. He set down his pack, removed his boots, and stood beside the table. For a moment he said nothing. The room didn't ask him to. Somewhere deeper in the house, floorboards creaked, and a gentle voice called, "Come closer, traveler." There's soup on the stove. He smiled, and though he did not yet see the speaker, he felt he already knew her, the keeper of the candle, the one who watched the road for weary souls. He crossed the small room, drawn by the glow of the hearth, and as the candlelight shimmered behind him, snow continued to fall outside, covering the footprints he had left upon the hill. The night, the warmth, the steady flame, the woman who had spoken all folded around him until time itself her hair was silver, her smile and the little house on the hill kept shining, and the lines on her face folded like every wandering heart when she smiled. That there is always a light. She held a wooden spoon in one hand and a small bowl in the other, steam curling upward like the breath of the room itself. "Sit," she said, motioning toward a chair by the fire. "You look half frozen." Thomas nodded gratefully. He lowered himself into the chair, feeling the wood creak kindly beneath his weight. The warmth from the flames wrapped around him like a blanket he hadn't known he needed. For a while, neither of them spoke. The woman stirred her pot, the spoon clinking softly against iron. The sound was gentle, hypnotic, as though even the pot understood it was night and the world must not be disturbed. Thomas looked toward the window. The candle still burned, its reflection a second flame floating in the glass. Beyond it, snow drifted lazily past the pane, thick and silent. "Every night you keep it burning?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Always. Someone must." Her voice was low, almost musical. "You never know who might need to see it." She handed him a bowl of soup, thick with vegetables, rich with herbs. He lifted it slowly, the scent of thyme and garlic filling his chest. Each spoonful loosened the ache in his shoulders, melted the cold from his fingers. "Not many travelers this late in winter," she said, settling into the opposite chair. "Not many lights to guide them," Thomas replied. Her smile deepened, though her eyes carried something distant, a quiet sorrow that belonged to memory. "The candle began as a promise," she said. "Long ago, my husband left for the mountains and never returned. I light it for him still, and for anyone who wanders the same path." The wind moved softly along the walls, whispering through cracks like a voice that had forgotten words. Thomas set his bowl aside and listened. Inside, the fire crackled gently. Outside, the storm sighed. It felt to him as though the world had folded itself small, leaving only this room, this warmth, this single light. He spoke at last. "Then tonight, the candle guided me." The woman nodded once. "Then it has done its work." For a long moment neither moved. The silence was not empty. It was full, rich, alive with the pulse of comfort. Time drifted. The woman rose, laying another log on the fire. Sparks lifted like fireflies, glowing briefly before vanishing into air. Thomas leaned back, eyes half closed, watching the play of light on the rafters. "You may rest here," she said softly. "The guest room is small, but the bed is warm." He began to protest, but she raised a hand. "You've walked far." "No one leaves this house until morning, not while the snow falls." Her tone carried the gentle firmness of habit. He smiled, surrendering to her kindness. "I'll repay your care somehow," he murmured. "You already have," she said. "You came safely to the light." The room dimmed as the fire settled. Thomas followed her through a narrow hallway, each step creaking like a whisper of the past. The guest room was simple: a wooden bed, a quilt patched with careful hands, a small table where another candle waited, unlit. She handed him a match. "For company," she said. Then before leaving she added, "Sleep well." The house listens kindly. Her footsteps faded. Thomas stood for a while, looking at the new candle, feeling the hush of the house wrap around him. He struck the match. The flame flared, bright and brief, before settling into calm. Its light glowed over the quilt, the walls, the frost-patterned window. Outside, the storm whispered its old song. He undressed slowly, folded his coat at the foot of the bed, and lay down beneath the quilt. The mattress sighed beneath him, grateful for the company. The candlelight trembled once, then steadied. He watched its small dance, eyelids growing heavy. The warmth, the quiet, the soft rhythm of wind against glass, all of it drew him inward, toward sleep. As his eyes drifted closed, he thought of the woman's candle by the front window, still burning for those not yet arrived. He pictured travelers on the far road, pausing when they saw the glow, feeling the same slow peace fill their chest. He wondered how many nights that small flame had stood against the dark, how many hearts it had steadied. The thought made him smile. The room dimmed further, the world blurred, his breathing slowed to the steady tide of sleep. And in the last flicker of wakefulness, he whispered, "Thank you for the light." The fire had settled into a quiet breathing, its logs reduced to a soft heart of orange and gold. Thomas lay half awake beneath the quilt, drifting between the edge of thought and the weightless calm of rest. The candle beside him glowed steadily, its flame bending ever so slightly each time the wind sighed outside. From somewhere beyond the walls came the low hum of winter, snow brushing against the roof, branches giving small, contented groans beneath their load. He listened without effort. The sounds became part of his pulse. The hush, the pop of sap, the faint whistle through a keyhole. Each noise folded into the next until there was no difference between them, only the steady rhythm of night continuing. His thoughts wandered gently, unhurried. He remembered the long road behind him, the valleys and forests blurred now like a dream seen through frost. He pictured the woman downstairs, perhaps dozing in her chair, the spoon resting in her lap, the candle still keeping its watch at the window. The warmth deepened. Shadows on the ceiling moved like slow water. Thomas felt his body grow heavy, his mind lighter, floating above him like breath. He imagined the candlelight as a living thing, stretching through the rooms, touching the walls, pausing kindly over every object, the kettle, the old boots by the door, the bowl on the table. It lingered on them as though remembering stories they once knew. Somewhere between waking and sleep, he began to dream. In the dream, the room widened into a meadow of silver grass. The fire became a small sun at the horizon, and the air was filled with drifting sparks that turned to stars. He walked barefoot through the field. Each step left a faint glow that faded behind him. The air smelled of pine and honey and quiet rain. A river whispered nearby, calm and certain, moving toward some endless peace. He followed the sound until he reached its bank. The waters shone like liquid glass, reflecting the candlelight of 1,000 unseen homes. Across the river stood the woman, younger now, her hair dark and her smile bright as morning. She held a lantern, its flame the same color as the one in her window. "The way is gentle," she said, and her voice carried like music. "Rest here first, then cross when you are ready." He sat beside the river, feeling the grass cool against his hands. The stars above turned slowly, patient and infinite. A soft mist rose from the water and wrapped around him, warm despite its touch. He closed his eyes, and the world breathed with him, in, out, in again, until he could no longer tell whose breath it was. The dream changed without breaking. The meadow became the room once more. The fire still glowed, the candle still burned, the snow still fell. But everything was quieter, as if the night had drifted deeper into itself. He turned on his side, pulling the quilt close. The fabric smelled faintly of lavender and smoke. Beyond the window, he could almost hear the snow landing, each flake a single note in the music of the dark. He thought of the travelers still out there on the road, walking beneath the same sky, searching for a light. He wished them warmth and safe passage. Then he thought of nothing at all. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat softened. The last thing he felt was the gentle pulse of the candle flame against the darkness, a small, eternal promise that the light would keep watch through every dream and every night to come. The fire had burned low, the logs now only soft shapes glowing with quiet color. A thin line of smoke rose and folded into the chimney's darkness. The candle on the bedside table flickered once, then steadied again, its light gentler than before, like breath that refused to stop entirely. Beyond the window, snow still fell, though slower now, the flakes larger, drifting more like feathers than ice. The house sighed with every change of wind, the beams settling, the walls murmuring in their sleep. Thomas did not move. He had drifted far from waking thought, yet had not fully given himself to dreams. There was only that middle place, the hush between heartbeats, the weightless drifting of a body that has forgotten its shape. He felt the warmth of the quilt against his chest, the faint coolness of air on his face, and somewhere inside, a calm that asked for nothing. In the other room, the old woman stirred once, perhaps to lay another piece of wood on the fire, or to check that the window flames still burned. Her footsteps were soft as memories. Then even those sounds disappeared, and the world became a single note of quiet. Time lost its edge. Thomas imagined the night stretching far beyond the hill, across the forest and the valley, until it touched the sea. He saw, in his mind slow unfolding, the waves rolling gently under a sky of ash and silver. Somewhere, another candle glowed in another window. Somewhere another traveler was walking through snow toward its promise, and for an instant he felt connected to them all, every soul that ever sought light in darkness. The thought lingered, then thinned like mist. His breath fell into rhythm with the small creaks of the house. The sound of snow became the sound of his own breathing, and the glow on the wall became the soft shimmer of dream. If he turned his head, he might have seen the candle tremble, as though aware that its watcher was nearly gone to sleep. The flame leaned, straightened, leaned again. Shadows moved across the rafters, slow and liquid. One shadow stretched toward the bed, not dark, but golden at its edges. Thomas felt its warmth brush his hand, a touch so light he might have imagined it. Yet it carried comfort, a wordless assurance that nothing in this night could harm or hurry him. Outside, a fox crossed the white field, leaving a trail of delicate prints. An owl turned its head once, then vanished into silence. Even the storm had grown weary of its own voice and rested. The world waited, still and kind. Minutes or hours passed. The candle cared little for such measures. Wax gathered, pooled, shimmered. The flame bent low, bowing to the air, then rose again as though remembering its duty. Thomas murmured something, a half-formed dream name, a sound like "thank you," and drifted deeper. In that drifting, he dreamed once more. He was back on the road, but it was summer now. The hills were green, the sky open and clean. Birds followed him, their wings scattering sunlight. Ahead he saw the same house on the hill, its window open, the curtain moving gently. The candle burned inside, yet its light was daylight, not firelight. He reached the door and found it already ajar. A voice, soft and familiar, said, "Come in, traveler. You found your way." He stepped forward. And in that step, the dream folded quietly into sleep's full embrace. The house, the road, the valley, all melted into one long breath. Back in the small room, the candle burned lower. Its wick curved, its wax gathered into stillness. Outside, the first hint of dawn waited beyond the clouds, faint and patient. When the last of the flame bowed and became smoke, the sky was already turning the color of pearl. Downstairs, the front window candle still shone, faithful to its promise. Its little flame trembled in the draught, not in fear, but in greeting. For somewhere beyond the valley, another traveler had begun his journey, and the light was there to guide him home. Morning crept slowly across the valley, shy and uncertain after so long a night. The snow had stopped, and the clouds above were stretched thin like pale silk. Light gathered quietly at the edges of the world, spilling first onto the highest branches, then down across the roofs and fences until the hill itself began to glow. Inside the small house, everything was still. The air was warm with the scent of wood smoke and lavender. The fire had gone to embers, breathing softly in its sleep. The only flame now alive was the one in the window, the faithful candle that had burned through every hour of the storm. Its wick was short, its pool of wax deep and calm. Yet the flame itself stood straight, bright and calm like a thought that refused to fade. Dust motes danced in the air around it, glittering as the first sunlight touched the glass. In the guest room, Thomas slept on, untroubled and steady. His dreams had wandered beyond words. His face was peaceful, as though the night had been rewritten inside him. The quilt rose and fell with his breath. The candle on his table had burned itself out some time before dawn, leaving only the faint trace of wax and a thin wisp of smoke that curled upward like memory. The house listened. It seemed to know when someone slept deeply, the way old trees know when the wind has gone still. The walls were quiet, the floorboards rested. In that hush, time itself moved slower, each minute stretching wide enough to hold a full heart. Downstairs, the old woman sat once more in her chair beside the hearth. Her eyes were half closed, her hands folded in her lap. She looked toward the window and smiled at the little flame that had kept its promise. For a long moment she simply watched it, saying nothing, breathing in rhythm with its sway. Then, with a tenderness reserved for small miracles, she rose and walked to the window. The snow outside glowed faintly blue. The path Thomas had taken up the hill was now hidden beneath the night's fall. All the world seemed clean and new, as if born again in silence. She reached out and cupped her hand around the candle's glow, not to smother it, but to feel its warmth. "You've done your work," she whispered. "Rest now." And as if it understood, the flame bowed gently once, twice, then thinned to a line of gold before vanishing. The last curl of smoke rose, coiling and fading into the still air. For a heartbeat, the room felt almost too quiet, the air holding its breath. But then the sun lifted over the ridge, spilling through the empty window and filling the space with light so soft it seemed to hum. Every shadow melted, every corner gleamed. The candle's duty was complete, yet the light remained. Thomas stirred. The warmth of morning touched his face, and his eyes opened slowly, heavy with rest. For a moment he did not know where he was. Then he saw the folded quilt. The frost on the window now turned to lace, and he remembered. He rose and dressed quietly, careful not to disturb the stillness. When he stepped into the main room, the woman was already there, smiling faintly as though she had been expecting him. On the table, 2 cups of tea waited. their steam curling upward in slow, ghost like ribbons. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. He nodded. "Better than I have in years." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Then the candle has done its work twice?" They sat together for a while, sipping in silence. The warmth of the tea and the morning sun felt almost the same, gentle, patient, kind. Outside, the snow glittered like glass dust scattered across the hill. Somewhere far off, a bird tried its first song of the day. When it was time to leave, Thomas stood by the door, adjusting his cloak. "Thank you," he said softly, "for the light." The woman nodded. "There will always be one burning here, for you or anyone who needs it." He stepped outside. The snow crunched beneath his boots, bright and new. The road curved downward into the valley, and as he began his descent, the sunlight caught on something in the window behind him, a gleam so small it could have been a star. He turned once to look back. The house stood still on its hill, bathed in morning gold. Though the candle had gone out, its light seemed to remain in every stone, every beam, every breath of air. It was no longer a single flame, but the memory of one, and perhaps that was brighter still. He smiled, pulled his cloak tighter, and continued down the path. The air was cold, but his heart was warm. The valley stretched before him, wide and waiting, and above it the sky opened into a pale blue full of quiet promise. Behind him, in the little house on the hill, the woman sat by the window once more, looking out across the snow. And though no flame burned there now, anyone passing along the road would still have sworn they saw a light glowing faintly through the glass, a candle that refused to die, shining softly against the morning. Thank you for listening to Stories for Snoozing. I hope our story helped you unwind and rest a little easier. Until next time, sleep well.